On her wedding day, Amara Bennett did the unthinkable. She ran away from the altar. But when a terrified bride jumped into a stranger's car and begged, "Please take me away now," she had no idea the man behind the wheel was one of the most powerful billionaires in America, and the man she ran from would stop at nothing to get her back. Hello family, welcome to True Life Stories. Please subscribe and leave a like for us, it means the world to us. Also share this video to your friends and loved ones, and turn on post notifications so you don't miss future videos from us. Thank you as you do so. Sit back and relax as we dive into the story. The morning sun rose slowly over Savannah, Georgia, painting the sky with soft shades of gold and pink. It was the kind of morning that looked like it belonged in a dream. But for Amara Bennett, it felt like the beginning of a nightmare. Inside the bridal suite of St. Augustine Cathedral, the air smelled of roses, perfume, and expensive hairspray. The room buzzed with quiet excitement as makeup artists and wedding coordinators rushed around preparing for the ceremony. Amara sat silently in front of a large antique mirror, her wedding dress draped around her like a cloud of ivory lace. The fitted bodice hugged her slim waist while delicate beadwork sparkled across the neckline. Long lace sleeves traced down her arms, and the skirt flowed into a soft train behind her. Anyone looking at her would have thought she was the picture of happiness. But the look in her eyes told a different story. Her eyes were filled with fear. The makeup artist stepped back and smiled. "You look absolutely stunning, honey." Amara forced a small smile. "Thank you." But inside, her heart felt like it was beating too fast for her chest to hold. Across the room, her mother, Lorraine Bennett, adjusted the veil carefully over Amara's curls. "This is the day that will change everything for us," her mother said softly. Amara's throat tightened. "Mom, please," she whispered. Lorraine froze for a moment, knowing exactly what her daughter was about to say. "I can't marry him." The words came out trembling. Her mother sighed heavily. "Amara, we've already discussed this." "But he's not a good man," Amara pleaded. "Everyone knows how Cedric Davenport treats people. I've heard the stories." Lorraine's face hardened slightly. "Stories don't pay bills." Amara's eyes filled with tears. "We're selling my life." Her father, Calvin Bennett, stood near the door adjusting his suit jacket. He had been unusually quiet all morning. Until now. "Enough," he said firmly. His voice carried the weight of a man who had spent decades watching life pass him by with empty pockets. "Cedric Davenport is offering us a chance to finally breathe. He's paying off the mortgage, the hospital debt, everything." Amara stood up slowly. "And what does he get?" she asked. Her father didn't answer, because they both knew. "He gets me." Cedric Davenport was a powerful real estate magnate, nearly twice Amara's age. Wealthy, influential, and feared in Savannah's business circles. He had seen Amara once at a charity event, and decided he wanted her. To Cedric, she wasn't a bride. She was a possession, a beautiful young wife to stand beside him at galas and corporate meetings. A symbol. Amara grabbed her father's hand desperately. "Daddy, please. I'm begging you." For a brief moment, Calvin Bennett's expression softened. But desperation was stronger than love. "This is happening," he said quietly. The words crushed something inside her. A knock sounded at the door. The wedding planner peeked inside with a bright smile. "It's time." Her stomach dropped. Through the tall cathedral windows, Amara could see guests arriving outside. Luxury cars lined the street. Cameras flashed. Cedric Davenport had turned the wedding into a spectacle. Of course he had. He liked showing the world what he owned. Amara's breathing became shallow. This was it. The moment her life would no longer belong to her. Her mother gently squeezed her shoulder. "Walk down that aisle," Lorraine said softly. "Smile, and everything will be okay." But Amara knew something they didn't. Everything would never be okay. Minutes later, the church doors opened. Music filled the cathedral. Guests stood. Amara began walking down the aisle. The heavy dress brushed against the marble floor with every step. Hundreds of eyes watched her. At the end of the aisle stood Cedric Davenport. Tall, immaculately dressed in a black tuxedo. Silver streaks lined his hair, and his cold gray eyes studied her like a collector admiring a rare painting. Not love. Ownership. Amara's chest tightened. Her hands trembled beneath the bouquet of white roses. Step. 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 Then something inside her snapped. Her heart screamed. Run. Before anyone realized what was happening, Amara turned sharply. Gasps echoed through the cathedral. What is she doing? Someone whispered. Her heels clattered against the marble as she lifted the front of her dress and ran. Straight down the aisle. Out of the church. Behind her, chaos erupted. Amara, her mother shouted. Stop her, her father yelled. But she didn't stop. She burst through the cathedral doors into the bright Savannah morning. The humid air hit her face as adrenaline surged through her body. People on the sidewalk stared in shock as a bride ran barefoot down the street, holding up her gown. Cars slowed. Someone shouted, Is that a runaway bride? Amara didn't care. Her heart pounded louder than the traffic. She just needed to get away. Away from Cedric. Away from that church. Away from a life that felt like a prison. Then suddenly, a sleek black Rolls-Royce Phantom stopped at a red light beside the curb. The windows were tinted. The engine hummed quietly. Without thinking, Amara ran straight toward it. Her hands shook as she yanked open the passenger door. The man inside turned his head in shock just as she climbed in. Her voice came out breathless and desperate. Please. She slammed the door. Please take me away now. The driver stared at her. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then the man glanced into his rearview mirror. Several men in suits were running down the street toward the car. His eyebrow lifted slightly. A slow smile appeared on his face. Well, he said calmly. He pressed the accelerator. The Rolls-Royce surged forward. And just like that, Amara Bennett's old life disappeared behind them. The Rolls-Royce Phantom glided smoothly through the streets of Savannah, its powerful engine barely making a sound as it accelerated away from the chaos behind them. Inside the car, the air felt thick with tension. Amara's chest rose and fell rapidly as she twisted around in the passenger seat, staring through the rear window. The men who had been chasing her were now far behind. But her heart was still racing. Her hands clutched the lace of her wedding dress, as if it were the only thing keeping her from falling apart. Oh my God, she whispered under her breath. The driver kept his eyes on the road. He appeared calm, almost too calm for someone who had just been hijacked by a runaway bride. The sunlight passing through the windshield highlighted the sharp angles of his face. His skin was a deep warm brown, his beard trimmed neatly along his jawline. He looked to be in his early 30s, broad-shouldered and composed, dressed in a perfectly tailored charcoal suit. Even the watch on his wrist looked expensive. Very expensive. Amara suddenly realized she had just jumped into a stranger's car. Wait, she said nervously. You can drop me anywhere. I'm so sorry. I didn't know what else to do. The man didn't answer immediately. Instead, he turned the steering wheel smoothly onto the highway ramp leading out of downtown. Then he spoke. You jumped into my car at a red light, in a wedding dress, while being chased by men in suits. His voice was deep and controlled. Dropping you off anywhere probably wouldn't be the safest move. Amara swallowed. He had a point. The man glanced at her briefly before returning his attention to the road. So, he continued casually, you want to tell me what exactly I just drove away from? Amara hesitated. Her fingers twisted together in her lap. My parents were forcing me to marry someone. The man raised an eyebrow. Forcing? She nodded slowly. His name is Cedric Davenport. For the first time since she entered the car, the driver's expression changed. His jaw tightened slightly. I know that name. Amara looked at him in surprise. You do? The man let out a quiet breath. Hard not to. Cedric Davenport owns half the commercial property along the East Coast. He paused for a moment. And he's not exactly known for being a nice guy. Amara looked down at her hands. That's the man waiting at the altar. The car fell silent for several seconds. Outside, the tall oak trees of Savannah blurred past them. Finally, the driver asked quietly, Do you want to marry him? The answer came instantly. No. Her voice cracked with emotion. I begged my parents not to do this. But they said this was our chance to escape poverty. Cedric promised to pay off everything, our house, their debts, even my brother's college. Tears welled in her eyes, but she blinked them away. They said I'd learn to love him eventually. The driver shook his head slightly. That's not how love works. Amara let out a small laugh that sounded more like a sob. No, it's not. The car sped down the highway. Savannah's historic buildings slowly faded behind them. For the first time since the morning began, Amara felt the tight grip of panic begin to loosen. She turned toward the man again. I never even asked your name. He glanced at her. Malcolm. Just Malcolm. A faint smirk appeared on his face. Malcolm Pierce. Amara blinked. Her brain took a moment to process the name. Then her eyes widened. You're Malcolm Pierce? He nodded slightly. The realization hit her. Malcolm Pierce wasn't just wealthy. He was one of the most powerful black billionaires in the country. Founder of Pierce Global Tech, a tech empire worth billions. His companies worked with government security systems, luxury hospitality chains, and cutting-edge technology. His name appeared on magazine covers and business networks all the time. And she had just jumped into his car like a madwoman. Oh my God, she whispered. Malcolm chuckled softly. That's usually the reaction. She covered her face with her hands. I just kidnapped a billionaire. You didn't kidnap me, he said calmly. You made a very dramatic request for transportation. Despite everything, Amara laughed. It was the first real laugh she had felt in days. Malcolm glanced into his rearview mirror again, checking the road behind them. They'll probably start looking for you soon. Her smile faded. I know. Cedric Davenport was not the kind of man who accepted humiliation quietly. Amara felt fear creeping back into her chest. My parents are going to be furious. Malcolm shrugged slightly. They'll survive. But Cedric won't let this go, she said quietly. Malcolm's hands remained steady on the wheel. I figured that. She looked at him carefully. You're not worried? Malcolm's lips curved into a calm, confident smile. Cedric Davenport might scare a lot of people. The Rolls-Royce accelerated smoothly as the city limits sign passed behind them. But I'm not one of them. Amara stared at him for a moment. There was something about his presence, something steady and unshakable. For the first time since the nightmare began, she felt like she might actually be safe. Then Malcolm glanced at her again. So, he said lightly, where exactly does a runaway bride want to go? Amara looked out the window at the open highway. For the first time in her life, she had no idea. And strangely enough, that felt like freedom. The highway stretched endlessly ahead of them as the Rolls-Royce Phantom moved like a shadow along the asphalt. Amara watched the world pass through the window, her reflection faintly visible in the tinted glass. The ivory lace of her wedding dress still wrapped around her like a reminder of the life she had just escaped. Her heart had finally slowed, but a strange feeling lingered in her chest. Disbelief. Just hours ago, she had been walking down the aisle toward a man she feared. Now she was riding in a billionaire's car with no destination. Malcolm Pierce drove with quiet confidence, one hand resting loosely on the steering wheel. So, he said after a while, do you have somewhere safe you can go? Amara shook her head slowly. No. She looked down at her hands. If I go to any of my friends, Cedric will find me. He has connections everywhere. Malcolm nodded slightly. I figured as much. Silence settled between them again. Then he made a decision. Well, he said casually, looks like you're coming with me. Amara turned to him quickly. What? I was heading back to Atlanta anyway. He shrugged. I have more than enough space. Her eyes widened. I can't just stay with you. Why not? Because, she struggled to find the words, you're Malcolm Pierce. He chuckled. And that means I can't have guests. It means you're a billionaire. That's not contagious, he replied calmly. Amara stared at him for a moment before shaking her head with a small smile. You're surprisingly normal. I try. The drive to Atlanta took several hours. By the time the city skyline appeared in the distance, The sun had begun to dip lower in the sky, casting warm golden light across the towering buildings. Amara had never seen Atlanta like this before. The city looked alive, powerful. As they drove into downtown, the Rolls-Royce pulled up to a sleek glass skyscraper that seemed to stretch endlessly into the clouds. Amara leaned forward slightly. "Is this a hotel?" Malcolm parked the car. "No." He stepped out and walked around to open her door. "It's my building." Amara stepped out slowly, staring up at the massive tower. "You own the whole building?" "Most of it." A uniformed doorman immediately opened the entrance for them. "Good evening, Mr. Pierce." Malcolm nodded politely. "Evening." Amara followed him inside and nearly froze in place. The lobby looked like something out of a luxury magazine. Marble floors reflected the soft golden lights hanging from the ceiling. Large pieces of modern art decorated the walls. Everything looked expensive. Very expensive. Malcolm led her to a private elevator that required a fingerprint scan. When the doors opened again, they stepped directly into his penthouse. Amara's jaw dropped. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed the entire Atlanta skyline glowing in the evening light. The space was massive, sleek furniture, polished wood floors, and elegant artwork filling the open rooms. "This is your home?" she asked quietly. Malcolm loosened his tie as he walked inside. "Yeah." Amara slowly turned in a circle, trying to take it all in. "This place is bigger than my entire apartment building." Malcolm smiled slightly. "You'll get used to it." "I'm not staying long enough to get used to it." He looked at her. "We'll see." Just then, a woman in a neat uniform approached from the hallway. "Good evening, Mr. Pierce." "This is Ms. Carter," Malcolm explained. "She manages the house staff." Ms. Carter's warm smile immediately eased some of Amara's nerves. "Welcome," she said kindly. Malcolm nodded toward Amara's dress. "Can we get something more comfortable for her?" Ms. Carter smiled knowingly. "I anticipated that." She handed Amara a large garment bag. Inside was a beautiful emerald green dress, elegant yet simple, paired with soft gold heels. Amara looked stunned. "I can't accept this." Malcolm leaned casually against the kitchen counter. "You can." She looked up. "Why?" He gestured toward her wedding gown. "Because that dress is basically a missing person poster." Amara laughed despite herself. "Fair point." Later that evening, after showering and changing, Amara stepped out of the guest bedroom. The emerald dress hugged her waist perfectly, the rich color glowing against her deep brown skin. Her curls framed her face softly. She walked into the living room where Malcolm was finishing a call. He turned around and paused. For a moment, he simply stared. Amara noticed. "What?" Malcolm cleared his throat. "Nothing." His lips curved slightly. "You just clean up well." She raised an eyebrow. "You bought the dress." He shrugged. "Still counts." They both laughed. For the first time in what felt like forever, Amara felt light. Safe. Free. But across the city, someone else was not laughing. Inside a dark office, Cedric Davenport slammed his hand against a desk. "She ran," he said coldly. One of his men nodded nervously. "Yes, sir." Cedric's gray eyes narrowed. "Find her." His voice dropped dangerously low. "I don't care where she went." He leaned back in his chair. "Amara Bennett belongs to me." And men like Cedric Davenport never accepted losing what they believed they owned. The morning sun spilled through the massive glass windows of Malcolm Pierce's penthouse, casting warm light across the polished wooden floors. Amara stood quietly in the kitchen, holding a mug of coffee with both hands. She still couldn't believe where she was. Just 3 days ago, her life had been trapped inside a church aisle and a forced marriage. Now she was standing 40 floors above Atlanta, looking down at a city that seemed to stretch forever. It felt like another world, and in many ways it was. Behind her, Malcolm sat at the long marble island in the kitchen, typing something on his tablet while speaking calmly on the phone. "Yes, move the meeting to Thursday," he said. "I'll review the contracts this afternoon." Even in casual clothing, a fitted black t-shirt and dark joggers, he carried the quiet authority of someone used to being in control. Amara noticed how people spoke to him with respect, even fear. When he ended the call, he looked up. "You're staring." She blinked. "I wasn't. You were." She laughed softly and leaned against the counter. "I've just never seen someone run companies before breakfast." Malcolm shrugged. "Perks of being a workaholic." Amara looked out the window again. "You helped me without even knowing me," she said quietly. Malcolm studied her for a moment before answering. "You look terrified." He paused. "And I don't like bullies." Amara smiled slightly. Cedric Davenport was the definition of a bully. But that peace only lasted a moment. Suddenly, Malcolm's phone buzzed loudly on the counter. He glanced at the screen. His expression changed. "What is it?" Amara asked. "That," Malcolm said slowly, "is my head of security." He answered the call. "Yes." The voice on the other end spoke quickly. Malcolm's eyes hardened. "Where is he?" Amara felt a chill run down her spine. Malcolm listened for another moment before ending the call. Then he stood. "What's wrong?" she asked. Malcolm walked toward the window. "Cedric Davenport is downstairs." The words felt like ice dropping into her stomach. "What?" "He just arrived." Her hands began to shake. "How did he find me?" Malcolm's jaw tightened. Men like Cedric have a lot of resources. Fear crept into Amara's chest again. "Is he coming up here?" Malcolm straightened his sleeves calmly. "Yes." Her heart began pounding. "Malcolm, I don't want to see him." "You won't have to." There was something about the way he said it that made her pause. Malcolm pressed a button on the wall panel. "Send him up," he said into the intercom. Amara looked at him in shock. "You're letting him come here?" Malcolm's expression remained calm. "I'd rather deal with him face to face." Minutes later, the private elevator chimed. The doors slid open slowly, and Cedric Davenport stepped inside. He looked exactly the same as he had at the altar, tall, composed, dressed in an expensive charcoal suit. But his eyes were colder now. When he saw Amara standing in the living room, his lips curved into a thin smile. "There you are." Amara instinctively stepped back. Cedric walked forward slowly, like a man who already believed he had won. "You caused quite a scene at the church," he said smoothly. His voice carried the quiet arrogance of someone used to controlling every situation. Amara felt anger rise inside her chest. "I told you I didn't want to marry you." Cedric barely acknowledged the statement. Instead, his gaze shifted to Malcolm. "Mr. Pierce." Malcolm walked forward until he stood between them. "Cedric." The two men stared at each other. Both powerful, both wealthy, but very different. Cedric clasped his hands calmly behind his back. "I assume you know that woman is my fiancée." Malcolm's expression didn't change. "She was." Cedric's smile disappeared. "Her parents signed an agreement." Amara felt sick hearing those words again, like she was some kind of contract. Malcolm's voice dropped lower. "She's not property." Cedric laughed quietly. "That's where you're mistaken." His eyes moved toward Amara again. "You embarrassed me in front of the most powerful people in Savannah." His voice became colder. "That was a mistake." Amara stood her ground. "I'm not marrying you." The silence that followed felt dangerous. Cedric looked back at Malcolm. "You're interfering with something that doesn't concern you." Malcolm stepped closer. "Oh, it concerns me." Cedric raised an eyebrow. "And why is that?" Malcolm's voice was calm, but firm. "Because she asked me for help." He looked directly into Cedric's eyes. "And I gave it." For a moment, neither man moved. The tension in the room felt like a storm about to break. Finally, Cedric chuckled softly. "You think money makes you untouchable, Malcolm?" Malcolm leaned slightly closer. "No." His eyes hardened. "But it makes it very easy to destroy men like you." The room fell silent. Cedric studied him carefully. For the first time, a hint of irritation crossed his face. Then slowly, he straightened his jacket. "This isn't over," he said coldly. His eyes lingered on Amara. "You'll regret humiliating me." With that, he turned and walked back toward the elevator. The doors closed. And just like that, he was gone. Amara's legs felt weak as she exhaled deeply. "Is he really gone?" she asked quietly. Malcolm nodded. For now. She looked at him nervously. He sounded serious. Malcolm gave a small smile. Men like Cedric always do. Amara stared out at the city again. The danger wasn't over. Not even close. But for the first time in her life, she wasn't facing it alone. Because Malcolm Pierce stood beside her. And he wasn't afraid of Cedric Davenport. Not even a little. 2 months passed. Atlanta slowly became home to Amara Bennett. At first, she moved carefully through Malcolm Pierce's world, feeling like someone who had accidentally wandered into a life that didn't belong to her. The penthouse, the skyline views, the quiet luxury of everything around her. It still felt unreal. But Malcolm never treated her like a guest. He treated her like she belonged. Every morning, they shared breakfast in the bright kitchen while the city woke up beneath them. Sometimes Malcolm would already be in a crisp suit, preparing for meetings that would shape million-dollar deals. Other mornings he would sit across from her in a simple t-shirt, drinking coffee and teasing her about how slowly she woke up. You'd never survive the business world, he joked one morning. Amara rolled her eyes. I survived a forced marriage and running through downtown Savannah in a wedding dress. Malcolm raised his mug. Fair point. But behind the peaceful routine, one shadow still lingered. Cedric Davenport. For weeks he had tried everything. Legal threats, pressure on Amara's parents, even rumors spread through the media about Malcolm kidnapping a bride. But Malcolm Pierce was not a man easily intimidated. Using his vast resources and legal team, Malcolm uncovered several illegal business dealings connected to Cedric's empire: fraud, bribery, and offshore money laundering. The evidence was undeniable. One morning, the news broke across every major network. Real estate mogul Cedric Davenport under federal investigation. Amara watched the television in stunned silence as reporters discussed the growing scandal. He's finished, Malcolm said calmly from behind her. She turned slowly. You did this. I didn't create his crimes, Malcolm replied. I just made sure the right people saw them. For the first time since that terrifying wedding day, Amara felt something lift from her chest. Cedric Davenport was no longer a threat. He was a man fighting to keep himself out of prison. And he had no time left to chase a woman who refused to belong to him. Later that evening, the city glowed beneath the penthouse windows as the sun dipped behind the skyline. Amara stood on the balcony, the warm breeze gently moving through her curls. She wore a flowing cream-colored dress that Malcolm had bought for her during a quiet shopping trip weeks earlier. The dress moved softly in the wind. Behind her, the balcony door opened. Malcolm stepped outside. He leaned against the railing beside her, both of them watching the city lights flicker on one by one. Cedric's lawyers are negotiating, he said. But it's not going well for him. Amara nodded slowly. Good. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Amara turned toward him. You changed my life, Malcolm. He shook his head slightly. You changed it yourself. I just happened to be at the red light. She smiled. Still. Her voice softened. I don't know where I would be if I hadn't opened that car door. Malcolm looked at her quietly. For the first time since they met, the confident billionaire looked slightly nervous. You probably would have found another way, he said. Amara stepped a little closer. Maybe. Their eyes met. The silence between them felt different now, no longer awkward or uncertain. It felt warm. Safe. Over the past 2 months, something had grown between them. Something neither of them had expected. Malcolm spoke first. You know, when you jumped into my car, I thought that was going to be the strangest moment of my week. Amara laughed softly. Only your week? Definitely my year. She shook her head. Well, for me it was the moment my entire life changed. Malcolm studied her face for a moment. Then he asked quietly, Do you regret it? Amara didn't hesitate. No. Her eyes softened. Not for a second. Malcolm exhaled slowly, as if releasing a thought he had been holding back for weeks. Good, he said. Because I don't regret it either. He reached for her hand. Amara felt warmth rush through her chest as their fingers intertwined. You deserve someone who chooses you, Malcolm said gently. Not someone who buys you. Her heart beat faster. And you? She asked softly. Malcolm smiled. I choose you. For a moment, the entire city seemed to fade around them. The fear, the chaos, the wedding she ran from. All of it had led to this moment. Amara squeezed his hand. Good, she whispered. Because I choose you too. Malcolm pulled her gently closer. And under the glowing Atlanta skyline, he kissed her. This time, Amara's heart raced again. But not from fear. From love. The runaway bride who once begged a stranger, please take me away now, had finally found exactly where she belonged. And the billionaire who stopped at a red light that morning had found something he never expected. Not power, not success, but the one thing money could never buy. Love. We have come to the end of the story. I hope you enjoyed it. Leave a like and subscribe to my YouTube channel for more interesting stories.